Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the PBSC podcast, Mark and Steve. This is episode 264. My porn/sex addict partner put me through hell. Now he's in recovery and wants to reconcile. Is it worth the risk? Oh, man, did this resonate.
Well, that title just, we're just going for the throat on these titles these days, aren't we?
We are. Well, we're going to do this episode a little bit different today. I'm going to read exactly what she submitted to us, and then we're going to actually take her submission and just break it down into chronological parts and address each one of them. We're just going to talk about it today.
And just for clarification, because I don't think we said it, so this came to us from a partner going through betrayal trauma with a spouse struggling with addiction. So just so we're on the same page.
Yep.
Okay.
So here's what she sent. Hi, Mark and Steve. I am the betrayed partner of a porn, sex, and masturbation addict. We were together for about 9 years in total. After about 5 years or so, I made my first discovery. And ever since our relationship has been in chaos, full of attempts to heal, attempts to enter recovery, therapy, CSATs podcasts, D2C, 12-step, formal disclosure, more discoveries, more lies, more pain, suffering, boundaries, broken boundaries, etc. Let me take a breath. I was 100% in, and he wasn't. The bottom line from my perspective is that he was incapable of doing the things required to heal himself, help me heal, and keep us safe. About a year ago, I finally got healthy enough to leave the relationship, and I didn't look back. We've been pretty much had no contact, my choice, since then. However, through a series of recent events, I learned that after I left him, he entered real recovery and, per his assessment, is doing well, feeling strong, and has about 6 or so months of sobriety. What am I supposed to do now? He would love to reconcile, and honestly, I would too, but only if his change is real and lasting. He put me through absolute hell. And 6 months of recovery, and all things considered, is not very long. I love him and he loves me. That's never been the issue. We love each other, like each other, and loved our life together. But he put me through absolute hell. And I'm never going back to living the way I did before. And I don't want to be devastated again. Is it worth the risk? How can I tell? He's most definitely in recovery and is showing up way differently. But at the same time, I've already noticed him contradicting his claim to be practicing rigorous honesty. Help.
Okay. Well, there's a lot there. And we have done, I'll just say right out the gate, we have done podcasts similar to this, some even fairly recently in the last couple of months. But we always, not that we will address questions like this when they come to us every time, because you can see a pattern with these types of questions, right? What do I do? But every situation is a little bit different. And we know that every time we cover this for you partners, because we know it's a common issue, hopefully you get a little bit of a nuance or a little bit different of a perspective from us based on what you're sending us. So hopefully piecing this with other episodes can help other people as well.
And because if you go back and you look at our PBSC podcast, you can go in and do a search into the whole history, and you can see things like what is real recovery, why should I stay with a porn addict? I mean, there are past episodes about this sort of thing, but there were some unique little things about this that we thought, it'd be good to address this.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing, Steve, we have faced this quote dilemma a lot, both us personally, because we know what it was like to quote, be in recovery and giving it lip service and not really being serious. For me, for years and years, going through the motions until, like this partner, till my wife put her foot down. And then I decided if I was going to get serious and really do the work. And we have worked with lots and lots of couples where this has been the case. Is he really in? Is he not? Right? I thought he was in, but then I realized he was just going through the motions, and there were more lies and more betrayals. And now he seems to be serious, but how can I know for sure? And is it worth the risk of me continuing in this relationship or coming out of the separation we've had? How do I know? And so we have seen this a lot over the last 20 years. So this is not new.
No, it's not. And it's a scary question, right? I
is.
mean, and I will say, I really like how she phrased it, because this helps to cover something that we talk about frequently. We're not going to hit on today, because this is a new spin on, again, a prior podcast episode. She says specifically, is it worth the risk?
Is it worth the risk?
And I'm glad that she says that, because it's not uncommon for us to receive submissions from partners, and we are always the deliverer of bad news with this. Oftentimes we will get submissions from partners, and we totally get where they're coming from and the desire for this, but they will too often be looking, unfortunately, in our clinics and here on the podcast for quote unquote guarantees.
Yes.
Right. There's got to be a way to, but here's the fundamental rule that we've talked about before on the podcast. It's emotional physics. Intimacy is always a risk. Always.
Yes.
The degree to which I open myself up to another person means by nature that is the degree to some extent or another. Look at it like math, right? To which they can hurt me as well.
It's true.
I can't have vulnerability without the potential of harm.
Yep.
That alone, if you take nothing else from this podcast, hopefully you take that. And it's a hard reality to hear. And it's not even necessarily fair. It simply just is.
Yeah.
Right. And so I really like how she said that. Is it worth the risk? Because it will, if she jumps back into this, just like any partner does, it is always a risk. Right. It always is.
Yeah, it really is. Well, and let's break this down one part at a time and what she sent us. The first part that really jumped out at me was what she says at first. I made my first discovery. So she discovered. She found him out, which often happens.
Yeah.
Didn't come forward with any of this. And then she said, ever since that discovery that she made, the relationship was in chaos. And then she says, coming from her side, full of attempts to heal, attempts to enter recovery. It sounds like attempts at therapy, attempts at CSAT, certified sexual addiction therapists, listening to podcasts. It even says D2C here. There may have even been an attempt to get into D2C or try it for a little bit. Attempts at 12-step, formal disclosure. I don't know if that means formal disclosure with an experienced therapist facilitating formal disclosure. It just says formal disclosure. More discoveries, more lies, more pain, more suffering, more boundaries, more broken boundaries. And then she says something really critical. I was 100% in, and he wasn't. So this partner has put in a lot of effort. And it looks like she exhausted pretty much every alternative that existed.
An all too common dynamic that we see with couples, by the way.
And he wasn't.
She's in. She's doing everything that she can. He's not. And then you see, obviously, later on in what he said, it sounds like now he is, but I am spent. Right? I gave some of my best. I gave the best pieces of myself in this when he wasn't in. And so she's here in a state of kind of wanting to make it work, but you can almost hear the burnout in the submission. Understandably slow.
Can hear it. Yeah, and that's a part of this decision process, is how much she put in and how long he waited to do anything. Not that is a guarantee that he's not in now, but we have way too much experience to see how that has turned out too often when the guy waits until it's absolute catastrophic and then he gets serious. And how many times would we say that ends up being real and lasting?
It depends, right? I mean, because we see it not work out many times.
You?
Ironically, though, That's kind of my story.
That's what worked out for us.
So it
you don't
can
know.
happen, but you just have to be real about that, right?
Just don't know.
And it is also a factor to keep in mind for partners. Again, we're not discouraging her by any means because our story was a success story that started off largely this way. But if I could go back with my wife, and if as I look back kind of over our journey in recovery, it probably would have been a good thing for Brittany and maybe Mark's wife, LaDawn, to have been able to be better in tune with maybe how burned out they were and what additional needs were going to be needed going forward.
Yes.
To maybe smooth out the process once we did get serious. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Because I think there was more of that, at least on my wife's end, speaking for myself, than she probably realized. And the road was a bit rocky, I think, as part of that, because we weren't really fully acknowledging that. I don't think she really saw it, and I was oblivious.
Well, and what Steve, what have you and I often seen? Partners will go through this for years, and now the addict finally, when it's, everything's on the line, or he finally gets serious, he's like an excited recovery racehorse bursting out of the gate, speeding down the track, all enthusiastic, and then looking at her and saying, what's your problem? I'm all in.
Absolutely.
I'm all in now. Why are you lagging behind? What's going on here?
Yes.
Boy,
absolutely.
do we do that a lot.
Well, and you can see a similarity here, and this, we've covered this a bit in other podcasts, but maybe another episode on this another time we'll look at. But you can see the lesson to be learned on both of those extremes. Whatever you're going to do in this process, when it comes to setting new boundaries, when it comes to making decisions around compatibility, because that's really what this is going to be, right? Is an examination of compatibility and willingness and all those things. Part of, I think, what needs to be factored in there is both of these partners are going to have to, in addition to being accountable for the past, specifically on his end, for him not being available, if she does elect to go forward. But the other piece of that, I think she's going to need to be really honest with herself in terms of, given that history, what is she going to need from him, letting go of what he thinks is reasonable and focusing on what is authentic to her.
Yes.
But the other piece, which is just as important, is her being honest with herself about how much she can really give this time around. Because it's hard to say from the submission how much she really spent, how much she really invested, how much burnout she really is experiencing. Whatever that is for any partner listening, you have to be honest with yourself about that and allow your boundaries around the relationship, the boundaries with your partner, but also the boundaries around yourself, be reflective of that, so that whatever you set up, because here's the key, it has to be sustainable.
Right.
Whatever we set up in this arrangement, if you are going to go forward, it's got to be honest, and it's got to be authentic from that sustainability standpoint. Can we do whatever it is we're committing to here in the long haul?
Yep.
So.
Yep. Here's what I can give, and here's what I cannot.
Yes.
Yeah. Here are my capacities. Hey everybody, PBSC podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself. and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Now, she said something that, boy, did this really jumped out at me. The bottom line from my perspective, talking about her, is that he was incapable of doing the things required to heal himself, help me heal, and keep me safe. That shouted at me. He was incapable. How many times did I use excuses like that as an addict, and how many addicts have I worked with where they claim that they're just not capable? I can't, there's just no way out of this. Because now he's apparently he's plenty capable now. So I don't agree with the idea that he was incapable. He was unwilling, right? He was unwilling. He was escaping. He was rationalizing, justifying, minimizing all the things that we talk about, but incapable, and I think she needs to really check that in how she assesses what's happened in the past history.
Well, and she does specify that, right? He was, at the time, my perspective was that.
I know.
But you're right. I mean, being real with that in terms of now, and again, that kind of ties in with what I said a minute ago. If I'm a partner looking to go back into this, part of what I'm going to require is that there needs to be accountability for what was going on during that time on his end.
Absolutely.
It almost would probably look, if I was facilitating this couple, if I'm the one working with them, it would almost be kind of a mini disclosure of sorts.
Yes.
Right? Like what was going on while I was busting ass and doing all these things, you were saying you couldn't or you weren't or whatever. I need not just an accounting of what were you really doing and not during that time and half-assing versus not, but I need to know the why. And I need you to do the work to figure out what the hell was going on, because if you don't, what's bound to happen? You're going to repeat it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I need to know why you weren't doing these things so that we can talk about how you're going to move through those obstacles this time.
Yes. So he's going to need to do whatever work he needs to do to figure that out so that he can be accountable for that.
Yeah.
I like that. And again, I really assure you, we come from a scenario like this, so we are not saying that there should not be reconciliation there. Mark and I obviously favor that anytime possible. But the next thing she says that stands out to us, about a year ago, I finally got healthy enough to leave the relationship and didn't look back. Now, if I'm a partner considering going back to this, which again, we have seen happen. I worked with a couple once in another program before I opened my private practice. For sake of time, the short end of the version is it was like a 2-year program that we were running, a 2-year group program. One group was for the partners, one group was for the addicts. During the beginning phases of that process, she divorced him. And they actually got formally divorced, separated the marriage, but through a series of events, his consistency being one of the big ones, they got remarried right at the end. And that was authentic for them. So it does happen. But that being said, so there's the hope, but that being said, if I'm a partner looking at jumping back into this, I also need to be very much in tune with, there was a time a year ago where I ended this relationship, and we all know how powerful the pull of hope can be. Hope is a powerful motivator, and that's a good thing as long as it is also paired with reality. What I mean by that is she needs to be very much in tune with, not just kind of on the pie in the sky level, like what were the critical things that made this incompatible at the time? What were the reasons I left and said, I'm out?
Yeah.
And I need to make sure that I am reacquainted with those, going into discussions with him around everything, whether it's therapy that we're doing or even opening discussions, boundaries, whatever. That list of reasons why you left make sure that you reacquaint yourself with those, because when you're reforming your boundaries, your bottom lines begin with that list.
They begin with that list.
These will not happen again if we're going to be together. It's not optional. And it's up to you whether you decide if you can do that, but these are not optional. So,
Well, and she also, something really significant in that statement, I finally got healthy enough.
yeah.
I would encourage her to really spend some time on her part now, a year later, and really ask herself, what does that mean? How did I get healthy enough? In what ways was I unhealthy? And I changed those to get healthy. And are any of those unhealthy things of the past showing up again now?
Mark took the words right out of my mouth, right? Have I regressed in my recovery at all? In other words, is this desire to get back together authentically motivated on my end?
Yes.
And I'm just saying this is an example. This isn't specifically to this partner, but it's something that we see in our clinic commonly. Is our old codependent tendencies or fears on my end rising up that are manifesting as I better get back together with him?
Exactly.
Right. In other words, if I'm getting back in a relationship with this guy, it needs to be from a place of choosing him and him choosing me, and not for any of the old codependent or unhealthy reasons that we were together before.
Because there's a statement in her next part that is what caused you and I concern, Steve, were any of her old dependency habits starting to show up again. Because she says, I learned that after I left him, he entered real recovery. Now I'm glad she says this part. And per his assessment, glad she added that, is doing well, feeling strong, and has about 6 or so months of sobriety. That's a little concerning. 6 or so.
It's awfully vague.
We have a sobriety date, folks.
6 months, 4 days, and 3 hours.
Yeah, he better know that. But then here's what she says at the very end of that caused me to think, is she still in the healthiest place that she got in to leave? Because she says, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
He's in recovery. He says he's doing well. It appears that this is so. Now suddenly I'm being put in a position. I'm kind of backed up in a corner. What am I supposed to do? Do you hear the potential unhealthy aspects of that question? Because she has 4 question marks that she put after that. Right? Like, well, now what? Like, this changes everything. I'm kind of backed into a decision place. Well, are you? I don't know what the intention was behind that question, but it concerns me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and something to look at again, we won't go into it in this podcast, but that manipulation for addicts runs deep. And is it overcomable? Absolutely. But is that any of that going on here?
We don't know.
Because if he's in a sincere place in recovery, one of the things that you should be looking for is he should be coming at this from a position of power. And I don't mean a power play like dramified. I'm talking about he should be coming from a place of, here's the work that I've been doing, and I miss us. If that's something that you're open to in terms of us reconciling, I would love to have that conversation. But there should be no pressure attached to that. There should be no guilting attached to that. There should be no shaming or think of the kids or this or that. None of that should be on the table if he's in a healthy place.
There shouldn't be any pressure that there's a time frame involved here.
Nothing.
None of that.
A healthy guy in recovery is going to be able to, the messaging that he should be sharing is, I'm good as I am. Being with you is even better, but I'm okay, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and again, you and I were kind of looking at how many times she says hell in her submission, because she says it again, and it's really significant. Yeah. It's really significant because she puts it in all caps, the word hell. Here again, she says, he's in recovery, he's doing good. What am I supposed to do? But then right after she says, what am I supposed to do? She says, he put me through absolute hell.
Yeah.
And 6 months of recovery, all things considered, is not very long at all. You can hear her authentic, healthy self interjecting. It's like 2 people are submitting this to us. The part of her that's kind of desperate to get back with him, but then the part of her that's saying, hold on, wait a second. You can just hear it. You can just hear the 2 sides to her. So interesting.
Yes.
And you're right. That's not very long at all. It isn't.
Yeah.
It's a great start, but let me tell you, real lasting recovery, 6 months is a drop in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
If we're just going to be blunt about it, it's good, and we applaud him, but that's a start.
Well, and the other thing is, at this stage, and again, this is a lot of inferring because we don't know, we know very little about this couple, but the term trust but verify comes to mind here.
That is humongous.
And I want to bring that up in terms of something that she mentioned earlier. You know, she listed all these different things that she has done. And it's always interesting to me when I work with clients how deep one or both partners were into the things that they were doing, whether it's working with the CSAT or listening to podcasts or our Dare to Connect program, right? So I'm just going to use an example. I'm going to use our Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples as a way to kind of demonstrate of how something like that could be used in terms of one thing that I know this coupleship needs. Because obviously, whatever else this partner is saying, one thing that I'm hearing here is this whole element of I needed consistency and it wasn't there.
Yes.
And you even hear her mention through a couple of times in the submission that she has some concerns around that, and pairing that with this trust but verify piece. People come into our Dare to Connect program for all sorts of reasons, and we have no idea. Being candid with you, we don't know if this partner is still in Dare to Connect or if she's gone. Or if they were here for a while and how well they use the program or not. But people use our program for all sorts of things. Dare to Connect is designed to meet a coupleship really wherever they at, and it is what you make of it. We have couples, for example, that are utilizing Dare to Connect to full effect right at the beginning of recovery, brand new. It's an economic alternative to therapy or a way to supplement therapy and do a lot less therapy paired with all of the assignments, all of the sessions, live and online, the interactability, the accountability, everything that Dare to Connect brings to the table. It's a way to supplement that. For other couples that we work with, I'm thinking of one couple in particular. They've been in our program since it very first began. They're in a great place and have been for well over a year and a half or 2 years. They do it simply as a maintenance tool.
Yeah.
And it's easily worth the price for them for that. And it can be anything in between. One way that this coupleship could use this, and this is what I would do, being honest with you, if I'm a partner and I'm looking for accountability, one of the many advantages to Dare to Connect is, one, we are hard hitting with the guys. We will challenge them on a variety of levels in that group setting. But this program includes assignments that addicts, partners, and couples need to do at least weekly, if not more so. They're written assignments that we ask couples to actually fulfill, navigate, adhere to, etc. And then there's supposed to be lots of discussion around those between the coupleship. And my experience, both as a clinician, but just as importantly, as a recovering, formerly manipulative addict, is that, to borrow Mark's wife's key phrase we mentioned on here, talk is cheap, show me. The proof is going to be in the pudding. We get guys in this program who vocalize all the time, I'm serious about recovery. If you're serious, then you're going to be able to dedicate the time to something that we ask. And if a coupleship is operating properly in the program and they're sharing with each other what they're doing and not, what their dailies look like, what the accountability looks like, and there's that process paired with check-ins and all the other things that we teach, you're going to find out really quick how dedicated anyone is to this process.
That is true.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That is a bit of a shameless plug for our program, but it's one of the reasons why we made it, because it can fill that gap of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, you're gonna find out whether he's serious or not, because we're gonna put his feet to the fire in recovery.
Because a guy should be able to do those assignments each week, and he should be able to sit down with his wife and be the one to set it up and be able to say, "Hey, I've got my assignment done, and I would love to share what I learned with you. When can we do that?"
Yep, week after week after week, and we
have that stuff provided for you. So
yeah, I would say this couple needs to look at doing that for a good year or more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's
so
see if he's really all in.
Lots of options, but there's an economically viable one. And with the promotion, I'll share the promotion at the end of the podcast here and the code tied to it. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see it at the bottom of the screen right now. But we're doing our best promotion of the year right now, where you get more than half off your first month. So now would be a great time to try this before January 31st, 2025. So anyway, that would be a great thing. That's something that's going to be needed, right? Is that accountability piece.
Absolutely needed. Now, the next thing she says here, this ignited my fire. This is a soapbox for me. I have heard this endlessly through Hollywood, through, rom-coms. It's everywhere. Here's what she says. And again, we don't know them, and I'm not here to criticize her at all, but I'm just here to kind of point out maybe where we all often come from with regard to this issue. I love him and he loves me. That has never been the issue. We love each other, like each other, and loved our life together. Now that sounds wonderful, but I invite you to remember that she stated 3 times in this submission the absolute hell that he put her through for 5 years of their relationship. And yet then she says, I love him, he loves me. That has never been the issue. I would submit that the understanding of love here needs to be expanded greatly. How many times, I'm trying to remember a movie years ago where a couple had split up and they came back, and I think the father-in-law said, I think I see love there. And she says, that was never the issue. What she meant when the movie was having sex was never the issue. How many people confuse love in a relationship with the physical sexual side of that relationship? What does it mean to truly love someone? I think it's much bigger and much deeper and much more self-sacrificing than most of our culture or media will ever point out, right? Love is patient. Love is not selfish. Love is, kind and sacrificing, the whole list. I think love was a problem in this relationship. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been putting in 100% of the effort and him none, as she described it.
I really like how you said that, and I like the bold lead into that, and I think it's absolutely true, right? I mean, and it's not to say that we want to be careful. It's not to say that he didn't love her. My wife and I had a conversation about this one time. You may love me, but do you love me enough for what in the ways that I need?
Well, and
Right.
you know what that word means.
Yeah.
I can tell you as a stone cold addict, I thought I did, but I didn't. My idea of love was about, would fit in a drinking straw space. And, then I realized this is far more expansive than I ever imagined. I had to learn how to love my partner over years and years of effort and doing my own work and expanding my own attitudes. My understanding of what love is today is way different than it was 20 years ago in my marriage.
Oh, I
Not
would
even the
absolutely
same
agree with
thing.
that.
No,
Yeah,
not even
for
the
sure.
same.
Well, and so yeah, I mean, there are gonna be a lot of conversations there, but I think hopefully this has, well, we've got a little one last piece to cover as we
One
wrap
last
up here.
piece.
But he put me through absolute hell, and here's
There it
that
is. There
again,
it is
right?
again.
There are literally 2 or 3 times that exact
Yeah.
phrase, absolute hell, has been mentioned, and I'm never going back to living the way I did before, and I don't want to be devastated again. Is it worth the risk? How can I tell? He's most definitely in recovery and showing up. That is a humongous question. But the biggest 2 things that I would say to add to that is, how can I tell? You have to really examine your authentic self in terms of your own needs, but then you also have to do what we're going to term optimize yourself as well. So we've had up to this point, this discussion has been really centered for the most part on him, what he should be doing or willing to do or not, and what that would look like. But there is the other side of this discussion that needs to happen as well. And we touched on it a little bit, but we'll expand on it here for a minute. When it comes to this risk of the heart, right, and going back into a relationship, there are the 2 sides. There's the risk itself, but then there's one's vulnerability to the risk or risk mitigation,
Yes.
right? I have a cousin who's more like a brother who works in risk mitigation for his company, among other things. And so what is he paid to do? Just like the name implies, his job is to look for potential issues and design systems and processes around it to minimize damage based on what they have seen in the past from other things, right? They learn from
Notice
past company mistakes.
Steve didn't say his job is to eliminate the risk of
No,
damage.
because again, there's always risk,
Yeah.
right? In anything, including this intimacy, like we talked about. But there are things that can be done to mitigate. Part of the trauma response that many partners, and really, this is what I think is going to help her, not just to be, I guess you could say, it not only will doing what we're going to talk about for a few minutes here as we wrap up, open the door to a greater possibility of reconciliation here, but it actually will help more of her authentic self to be able to come out as well in the process. And that is going to be her making sure that she is actively doing the work still to, I mean, there's a lot of different pieces of this, but to reduce his ability to hurt her, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
And there are lots of things that probably played into that based on Mark's and I's experience. Everything from codependency to overdependency to bad boundaries to ineffectual holding of boundaries to um, making exceptions to not finding and sharing your voice, cutting things off sooner, implementing consequences more proactively. I mean, there's a whole list. Doing your own trauma work, right? That's a whole other series of podcasts. But making sure that she is doing whatever work she needs to do so that she is not the same woman that was traumatized before. Now, of
Correct.
course, she's already not, right?
Yeah.
But you notice I'm not saying that she hasn't done any of that work, but it is about making sure that you're optimizing that and doing everything that you can to put yourself in the driver's seat of what we talk about so often. I am in a place where not just physically, not just financially, I emotionally do not need this man. And that's not some sort of ultra feminist perspective. I would say the same thing to a guy. That's when relationships work the best. Well, that's what we all signed up for in the beginning of a relationship. I never signed up to find my broken puzzle piece so now I can be whole, contrary to what rom-coms will teach you. I should have signed up healthily in this relationship because I'm an amazing, awesome, incredible person on my own. And I'm looking for another person that can take this complete person and make something 5 times more amazing with. Right? So rather than a half and a half making a 1, this should be a search for I'm already 1. I want to become 5.
Yep.
And that's the mentality that too many of us don't initially jump into relationships with. Well, if we didn't the first time and we got out of one in part because of that, we damn well better make sure we're getting into the next one from that place.
Yeah, I'm not
right?
coming into this needy. I'm not needy with regard to him. I'm a full sovereign, amazing person. I'm going to decide if I'm going to choose him
Yes.
again this time. And then he gets to decide if he's going to choose me. But what if he doesn't? What if over time I find out that it really didn't change, or he did for a while and now he's fallen back in? Where does that leave me? She needs to be prepared for that in every possible way. That's not a pessimistic attitude.
No.
That's meeting life where it is.
Absolutely. And it's about this trust versus verification. Our past for partners, the one's past trauma background is not something that should be running one's show, but it also is not something that should be dismissed either, because there are valuable lessons that we learned.
Yes.
If I'm going to touch a stove again after I got burned, I'm wearing mittens next time.
That's right. That's right.
Right. And that's the concept that we're talking about here. It's not about never using a stove again. That's Trauma Unchained will teach one that, right? Well, F stoves. We're done with stoves for all time now. Screw stoves. Every stove is bad. I guess I'm eating cold cuts for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not healthy either. But trauma can be an important guide in saying, hey, there were serious problems. Not only has the stove gone down in temperature, are you wearing the right mittens to handle one?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yep, that's what because her final statement is what caused us to go, ooh. Because here's what she says at the very end of her submission. I've already noticed him contradicting his claim to be practicing, quote, rigorous honesty.
Yeah.
Now, that might just be a part of his recovery, because we as guys in recovery, especially early on, learn how to finally, for the first time in our lives, live what it means to be honest. So he might be stumbling and falling on his face a bit, learning how to be rigorously honest. Or it might be the old stuff coming through and showing that he's really not where he says he is. I don't know. But the fact that she says that's all, she's already starting to notice that should be a little alarm bell going off that says what? As a betrayed partner, I need to be maximally prepared. I need to be doing my self-care. I need to make sure that this is a boundaried relationship that I am returning to. Right? Just so many important factors there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, everybody, we hope that is helpful for you. We hope that gives it's an overview, but it's a different way than we've ever tackled a familiar question before. So we hope that different approach to something you've heard on the podcast before was helpful. As always, we love and appreciate you. You're always welcome to send us in submissions through The pbscpodcast.com website at the bottom, there's a contact form. If you go to daretoconnectnow.com and click on the PBSC link up at the top, it will take you there as well to do that. But as always, when we have a couple weeks left, if you're listening to this podcast, we recorded this on January 20th, 2025. That means as of this recording, it'll be released tomorrow. So as of the release date of this, you will have 10 days to take advantage of our best and at least at this point, only promotional that we offer around our Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples. If you like what you hear here, you'll love Dare to Connect. If you use coupon code D2C for the holidays, and if you go to the website, if you're a new subscriber, a pop-up will show you the proper spelling of that, because I'm not going to confuse the hell out of you all audio-wise with that. Or if you're watching on YouTube, it'll pop up at the bottom of your screen right now. D2C for the holidays, you'll get more than half off your first month in addition to the free 2-week trial on the program. We have experienced we were already a big program, but we have had a huge jump up in subscribers since we released that. And again, there's only 10 days left on it. So we hope there's never been a better time. There probably won't be a better time to try Dare to Connect. Make 2025 the year you are done with this. We love that you guys love listening to our podcasts, and we love how valuable they are. But wouldn't it be great if they became less valuable to you? Yeah. Think of that for a second. Yeah. How many podcasts are you going to hear that on? Mm-hmm. Think if you were less reliant on them. Think if you think what it would be like to take recovery to a new level for you, for your partner. Don't wait. Make 2025 the year where you listen to less of these podcasts. Mark and I are in a weird field. When we do our job well, our clients go away. In almost any other field, when you do a good job, you get those people keep coming back for more and more. When we do our job, they discharge.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a weird way of thinking, but it's a good thing. And we would love to see you do that with your overall recovery and move forward in that journey. Dare to Connect and help you get there. We'd love to help you. You can find more info about that at daretoconnect.com.
All right. Hey, thanks for being with us as always. And we will pick things up in our next episode.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Everything expressed on the PBSC podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.